Alrighty, well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Study Abroad General Info session. We're thrilled to have you here tonight to talk about what we believe firmly is the most exciting thing that you can do during your time at Holy Cross. A couple of housekeeping things before we get started. The first is just full disclosure, this Zoom meeting is being recorded, and with the purposes of being able to share it afterwards. So just so you know, this is being recorded. A couple of other things just about the format of the presentation here tonight. This is a webinar format. What this means is that you'll be able to hear from me and from my fellow co-panelists and see our video and hear our audio. You all that are here as attendees will not be able to show your video or or have your audio play. However, you will have access throughout the entirety of the presentation to the Q&A feature, which I recommend that you use to ask any questions that you have, and ask them in the moment that you have them so you don't forget. And we'll be compiling them the whole time we go through, and we'll answer them throughout as they come in, and also any that could that build up by the end of the presentation. So with that in mind, we're going to start with some introductions. So my name's Chris Van Boven. I'm one of the assistant directors of Study Abroad, and I personally advise on several of our programs, including our programs in Australia, Greece, Germany, our environmental studies programs, and our programs in Italy. I'm also the main point of contact for International SOS, which is our international health insurance and global security assistance provider. We're also joined here by the rest of the staff of the Office of Study Abroad, including Professor Britt Smith, who's the director of Study Abroad. He advises on our programs in England, specifically Oxford and the London School of Economics. He also advises on Trinity in Ireland, and he advises on our programs in Russia, France, and Cameroon. Joined also by another of our assistant directors of Study Abroad, Jimena Collingwood, who advises on our programs, or Spanish-speaking programs in Latin America and in Spain. Jimena heads up our ambassadors program, and she also is the main point person for our Study Abroad panel that we run during the academic conference. Joining us here also tonight is Assistant Director of Study Abroad, Piper O'Sullivan, who advises on our programs in Asia, and also several of our university programs in the United Kingdom, so programs in England and Ireland and in Scotland. Jackie Shartner is here tonight as well. She's our office coordinator, and she is our manager-in-chief of the Holy Cross Study Abroad application. And she also manages the Study Abroad Office general email and the phone number. Moving forward, as you get into your Holy Cross online Study Abroad application process, if you have any questions about how to make that work and navigate that, we highly recommend that you reach out to Jackie. She's our resident guru of the online Study Abroad application system. And finally, Tammy Valeri is here with us as well. She's our billing and budget coordinator. She manages the budgets for all of our programs, and she's responsible for submitting payments to our host institutions. And importantly, for you all to know, she is responsible for processing student reimbursements for specific things like artistic, cultural, and athletic activity fees. And we'll talk about that later on. So also very, very excited to have with us here tonight some representatives from the Study Abroad ambassadors, the class of 2022. So these are folks who are going to be serving this coming for the current academic year, and we're thrilled to have them. And I'm going to actually invite them to go ahead and introduce themselves, give us your name, your major, and let us know where you studied abroad. We'll go ahead and start with Stephen.
Hi there, my name is Stephen Durkis. I am a senior, class of 2022. I'm a classics major, and I studied abroad last semester in Athens, Greece.
Okay, Sydney, you're next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sydney Kirchhoff. I'm a senior studying psychology and studies, and last year I was abroad in Bamberg, Germany.
Wonderful. Okay, Nick, take it away.
Hey everyone, my name's Nick Watson. I'm a senior international studies major, and last semester I studied abroad in Seoul, South Korea.
Fantastic. Okay, so as all of the introductions that we're going to have tonight, so we're going to move right into an overview of the presentation. This is what you're going to be seeing as we work through this tonight. So the first, we're going to talk a little bit about why you should be considering studying abroad in the first place. We'll then lead into a conversation about 3 key myths that you may have encountered about study abroad at Holy Cross, which will offer opportunities to segue into discussion of the types of programs we offer, finances around study abroad and academics abroad. We'll talk a bit about health and safety as well as COVID-19. And hopefully, of course, at that point, we'll have convinced you that you definitely want to move forward with this. And so we'll talk through the basic things that you have to do to get started. So we'll talk about next steps. And at the end of the presentation, we'll have an open Q&A where you can ask us, the staff, or our student representatives, any questions that you have about study abroad at Holy Cross. All righty, let's get into it. So why study abroad? There are all kinds of reasons to study abroad, more than we have time to discuss tonight. So we have tried to pare things down here to the 5 sort of key things, or 5 really important things that you ought to be considering about why you should study abroad. And the first is this idea of academic breadth and intellectual growth. By studying abroad outside of Holy Cross, you're able to take advantage of incredible opportunities to study coursework, to take advantage of on-site types of academic experiences that you cannot get at Holy Cross. And whether that's studying abroad in a major university system where you avail yourselves of huge course catalogs and opportunities to experience, different types of learning, sort of a lecture-based format of learning, or that's whether you're going to, a field research program where we're able to get hands-on experience in your discipline, whether that's in the Peruvian highlands or, at the right in front of the Acropolis. You can get these really excellent opportunities to enrich your programs of study by studying in context. And so actually, this is one really important area where I'd love to hear from each of our ambassadors to talk a little bit about their academic experiences that they gained studying abroad. So anybody can go ahead and chime in.
I took a lot of German language courses while I was abroad in Germany, but also courses that I wouldn't be able to take while at Holy Cross. So some specific cultural classes to the city that I was in just in Germany, but as well as like an introduction to linguistics class that they don't offer here at Holy Cross, but still helps me with my psychology major here on the college.
Who else? Feel free to chime in. Love to hear from all of you.
Like I said, I'm a classics major, and I took lots of courses in that area. I was also able to take modern Greek, which is not classics based. But one thing that I'd say is I met so many cool and interesting professors from all over the world: England, Turkey, Greece, America. And I feel like I'm able to, contact them if I need them for a letter of recommendation. And we have that connection now. So.
All right, Nick, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, much like Sydney, I took Korean language courses while I was abroad that are not offered by Holy Cross. And because I'm an international studies major, speaking a bit to political science, I had the opportunity to take a course on Chinese foreign policy, which is a course not typically offered at Holy Cross. And also a number of cultural courses like Korean literature. So there's a lot of opportunities to sort of expose yourself in new ways academically that you may not have thought possible before through study abroad.
Awesome. Thanks so much to all of you. Absolutely. So a second sort of key reason that you ought to consider studying abroad, and in the case of Nick and of Sydney, they've already talked about this a little bit, but this idea of study abroad is this providing really an unparalleled opportunity to develop your foreign language skills. By studying in a country where your target language is spoken, you are able to take this sort of abstract classroom-based language skills that you've learned and apply them in context to real-time communication with native speakers, often in the context of your homestay for many of our language programs. Certainly as you walk throughout the city, the city that you're in, the town that you're in is your classroom. And speaking of classrooms, in a majority of our language immersion programs that we have, you are taking courses in the target language alongside speakers of that language. So if you're in Spain, you're taking courses in Spanish alongside Spaniards. So you get this really wonderful sort of 360 experience of language development. I'd love to hear from Sydney and from Nick about your experience with the language development piece.
Yeah, a lot of my friends that I met in Germany were more comfortable speaking German than they were English. So we spent most of our time then conversing together in German, and we learned about each other's cultures then with that language. But then also just hearing different people's perspectives while like learning German. It was just a great opportunity to learn, and you're just deep in the trenches, like while you're in Germany at the grocery store, helping for directions at the train station. Like there's just so many opportunities for you to practice your language. And because so many other people there are there to learn the language, it's just such a welcoming environment for you to just grow.
Yeah, much like Sydney, I had a lot of similar experiences in that while in South Korea, I was living and breathing Korean language. It was everywhere, given that unlike countries in Europe, South Korea does not have as high a number of English speakers. So that gave me a lot more opportunities to actually practice my Korean skills. And among the Korean friends I made as well, it was really enlightening. And of course, I learned a lot because I was using the language that I was actively learning almost 24/7. So it was a really great experience overall.
Fantastic. Thanks to you both. So I think this, again, this idea of really immersing yourself in the language also builds into this next idea nicely, which is this idea of study abroad as an opportunity for developing intercultural competence and sort of adaptability. You know, if as you think of ways that you can take advantage of your time at Holy Cross to prepare yourself for the sort of real world, when the real world, you're going to be encountering employers and sort of graduate school admissions committee who are looking for folks who have these skills. As we move into an increasingly globalized world, employers want folks who are comfortable interacting with folks from all kinds of different backgrounds, who are able to not only understand communication as it happens in the sort of narrow range of experiences maybe you've had in your, you know, your home state, but sort of talking to a global community. And so that kind of adaptability is something that I think that studying abroad in a place other than what you've gotten a chance to experience as in your life in the United States, it really provides fabulous opportunities for doing that. And this kind of builds also as well as you're working to sort of navigate difference and grow in your adaptability. Something invariably that students end up reporting, and we end up seeing vividly when they come back, is that study abroad provide students with a huge opportunity to grow as adults, frankly, and become really independent. So, and the process starts, frankly, now, you know, so you get to a place where you're having to figure out what you want to do. It's a big decision. Then once you've figured out your program, you end up, going through the process of, little things like figuring out, what you need to pack, but then, other things like navigating the visa process. You get yourself in country, and then you have to navigate a new academic system and a new culture, potentially a new language. And so it's a huge personal growth potential that you have there. And as a result, people end up feeling, by doing that, really empowered. And what a sort of chorus that we end up hearing from students is this idea of that they learned a lot about themselves, right? So when we talked about, intercultural competence, some part of that may be that you're getting access to a new culture and being able to sort of expand your horizons that way in terms of learning about a new culture from, sort of the inside out. But in addition, you're also granted a lens to be able to view yourself and your own cultural and your own biases and assumptions about the world in this really amazing way. So both in terms of culture and then also in terms of the self-discovery, a lot of times students have this experience and what they learn is that they had radically underestimated themselves, that, wow, I can't believe I was able to do this. And then once you've done that, the list of things that you thought impossible for you to do just sort of diminishes over time. And so it's a really awesome experience. Any of the masters, maybe hear from one or two folks. Is that something that you all experienced at all?
Absolutely. I treated like the other student from Holy Cross that I went to abroad with, we treated the whole figuring out the German culture kind of like a video game. So if we can get past one hurdle, you're on to the next level. And can you can you beat it without being pushed back? So whether that was buying a SIM card or registering with the city or figuring out COVID restrictions, like there's just so many hurdles to get through. But I mean, all of them were completely doable and we made it home without angering anyone. So I think we learned a lot about ourselves and I'm happy that I went through that experience because now I can do anything.
Awesome. Others who want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, after the program ended, after the semester ended, I found myself on an overnight ferry from Piraeus to Hania, Crete by myself with a backpack. And I didn't think I would be there when I left for Greece in February, but
I didn't think you'd be there either.
yeah. Well, I feel
I'm
bad.
teasing.
So that was very important.
Very cool. Nick, did you have anything on that you want to share?
Yeah, just a quick point about empowering and just figuring out that you're able to do things that you didn't think were possible in the beginning. I was terrified when I first went to South Korea because I knew I was going to end up doing a lot of things in Korean. So just riding the metro or doing all these things that I normally have no problems doing, but all of a sudden, because now I'm doing them in a foreign country in a foreign language, I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. But as my study abroad experience evolved, I found myself doing things that I had yet to do on my own here in the US. I was opening my own bank account. I was paying for my own health insurance, doing all these, adult things that I didn't think I'd ever be able to do, but all of a sudden I was doing it. And so it really it felt like, wow, I conquered this, and it was a really big moment of self-discovery for me. So yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks to all of you. So for all of y'all listening, you get a huge leg up in terms of those real world skills relative to your folks who are planning to stick around on the Hill during their junior year. The last thing I want to talk about, again, we could talk about why study abroad for ages and ages, but the last thing I want to emphasize is this idea of study abroad as a pathway to building a global social and professional network, right? So this is something that all of our students who go abroad end up talking about. This idea that through going outside of Holy Cross to a new institution where they're meeting peers from not only their host country but often all over the world. So there's certain places, and I'm sure maybe folks like Sydney could talk about this, where you have in some of our European locations, let's say, or really anywhere, you've got places where they attract large groups of international students, and so your network could be absolutely multinational, both in terms of friends that you make there, but then also the connections you make with, with faculty. Again, as I've mentioned, we had folks go back, stay on to do research projects, to go back and get hired. Often folks will end up, going back for master's degrees. And these are folks that because, you are spending such important and sort of life-changing experiences with, when it comes to the friends you make, these are, friends that will last forever because again, they're there in the trenches with you. So just a really wonderful aspect of study abroad. Do y'all want to talk a little bit about, the networking opportunities in terms of social and professional?
This is, I think, a bit specific to a COVID semester, but all the international students kind of just made a bubble together, and then we just hung out together because, a lot of the German students are a bit afraid of people they didn't know. But yeah, now I know people from Finland and Greece and Italy and Hungary and everywhere, but and we really got to know each other during those 6 months abroad, and those will definitely be relationships that I'll keep for the rest of my life. They're great people.
And I mentioned this when I first spoke, but I've met a lot of great faculty and staff who were my professors from England, Turkey, Greece. But then after the program ended, I was able to go on an archaeological dig that directly stemmed from the CYA program. And there I met people from Norway, Serbia, Bulgaria, Turkey again. So just that, it completely expanded my my connections throughout the world. And I feel very connected to them. And I think I'm going to ask for a letter of recommendation from a professor from Turkey in the coming years. So.
Awesome. Nick, did you have any thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, basically the same as what Sydney and Stephen just talked about. During my study abroad experience, I met people from all around the world, probably most notably a couple of international students from Kazakhstan, which I thought was pretty incredible. And so just speaking to the amount of diversity that you'll encounter when studying abroad, and just the possibilities are endless, and you have the opportunity to form friendships like Sydney, Stephen, and myself had with people from all around the world. And you can really use those to your advantage in a professional sense, but just in terms of, just person to person, you have the opportunity to make great friendships. So
Awesome. Thank you so much to all of you. So this is really just sort of scratching the surface of all of the wonderful reasons that you should study abroad. Talk to any one of these students and I'm sure they can think of all kinds of other reasons. Talk to any of us the same. But this is a good sort of point of departure for us. I want to transition now to talking a little bit about some of the key myths that you might have encountered about study abroad at Holy Cross. And the first one is this idea that study abroad is some.
Before you do that, I just want to say one thing about why study abroad. First of all, it's super exciting. It's going to be a great deal of fun. It's a challenge, but it's really fun. And the other thing is, it will change your life in all these ways that Chris has talked about. It will make you so much, give you so much of the growth that he's mentioned. So it'll change your life, and it'll be an amazingly enjoyable, exciting experience. All right, sorry.
No, not at all, actually. So again, this first myth is this idea that study abroad is somehow only for certain majors, right? So let's say you're, I don't know, you're majoring in a foreign language or in, history or something like that, that somehow it's just for those folks, and that if you are, a STEM major or, econ, accounting, God forbid, pre-med, pre-law, that somehow study abroad is just out of the question, right? Well, I'm thrilled to be able to let you know that that's pure fiction. We are really proud of the fact that all majors at Holy Cross can and with the right support from our office do study abroad. And I want to illustrate something here, right? So take a look at this list, right? So this is a list of the students of the majors that have studied abroad. But a key thing about this list is that it's not just maybe you're thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe over the course of 20 years, this is the majors that have studied abroad. No, this is a snapshot of a single year, the class of 2019 to 2020. In a single year, all of these different majors studied abroad. And maybe you're thinking, okay, well, if you had the sort of that single, bio student, you can check off that box, right? So really, maybe it's not, huge numbers of folks who are doing this. On the contrary, so as an example, STEM majors accounted for 1 in every 5 students who studied abroad during that year. So STEM majors absolutely can and do study abroad. And maybe you're thinking, okay, that's great, but still not impressed because I'm a double major, not in the cards. Forget about it. Still, same idea. Double majors account for 1 in every 3 students abroad. So a significant proportion of the students study abroad have more than one major that they're pursuing. And so the idea that I want to emphasize here is that, and this will be kind of a thread throughout, is before you write yourself off of study abroad thinking that it's not possible for what, you name the reason, come to our office and let us be the ones to tell you that you can't do it, right? And so, folks who are pre-med, we're well aware of the constraints that you have in terms of the requirements that you need to satisfy domestically versus, overseas. We can walk you through. I have tools that we can use to sort of, map out exactly how things, could potentially work out with study abroad that you can then go back to your major advisors and discuss and come up with a plan. It's all about planning. So if it's something that you want to do, come and have a conversation with us. It's one of our favorite things to do is to show a student who is convinced that they can't study abroad, that in fact, with the right planning, you absolutely can make it work. A related question is this idea, well, can I take courses towards my major? And the short answer to that question is yes, right? So Holy Cross, the system is designed that through a series of advising processes, Holy Cross students can earn credit towards major, minor, and concentration major, minor, concentration requirements and common area requirements during study abroad. They just have to get approved by the appropriate parties. So major, minor, and concentration requirements are approved by, of course, your major, minor, concentration advisor. And then common area requirements are approved by the Office of the Registrar, and Spanish specifically these days by Chris Ricciardi, who's the Assistant Registrar. Let's talk also now about the types of study abroad programs that we have. So we're going to talk a little bit about where I can study abroad, what types of programs, and ultimately when. So where can I study abroad? We have an awesome suite of programs here. We can send students to virtually every continent except for Antarctica. We've got programs across 25 different countries spanning 8 different world languages. So we really feel good about having, again, some awesome opportunities for students in terms of, again, just range of experiences. I've put an asterisk on Japanese as this is the one language that's not, taught at Holy Cross. But however, if you're interested in studying Japan, you should go and have a conversation with my colleague Piper, and she can get you connected with Japanese language courses over at Clark University, where you can study through the consortium. Lots of really wonderful opportunities there. Let's talk a bit about the type of programs, right? They generally fall into two major categories, right? The first is that we'll talk about is programs in English-speaking countries, and the second are programs in non-English-speaking countries. So the programs that we have in English-speaking countries are of a particular kind, and they're these what we call direct enroll programs. So what we value at Holy Cross in the Office of Study Abroad is, and I think you could kind of get a sense from this from the students that we were hearing from, is that we really want to place students in programs where they have the maximal opportunity to immerse themselves into the life and the culture of those local communities, right? And so we do that by sending you to places where you can enroll directly at those universities, right? So, you go to the University of Melbourne and you are an actual student of the University of Melbourne. You go to Oxford, same idea, and you're taking courses alongside local students. You're living typically in these programs in student residences or apartments, and examples of these destinations are the programs, university programs in Australia, Ireland, and England and Scotland. The second category of programs in general are programs in non-English speaking countries. And within that, there are essentially two types. There are these language immersion programs that have you living with host families typically. And then there are field studies programs where the housing varies. It can be group living, host families, there's a range. But I want to drill down into this because I think it's important for you to understand as you look through the range of programs that we have and try to figure out what's the most appropriate for you. So regarding language immersion programs, these are very much like the English programs in English-speaking countries in that you're direct enrolling at a local host university. And it's also similar in that you're taking courses in, of course, the local language with local students. But here, where the local language is not English, it's whatever the local language is of that country. So if you go to Spain, you're taking courses in Spanish alongside Spaniards. And the aim here is to really sort of give you a jump start on developing your proficiency in that foreign language. Because then, again, as I mentioned, a sort of 360 of your experience is in that language from your home stay, typically, as I said, the courses at the university, and of course the city that you're in. We want to be sending students who have some background in that language to be able to position them, well enough to succeed in that context. And so there are prerequisites for those. So typically it's either through having studied through 202, in some cases 301. The idea is to have 4 or 5 semesters. You could talk, if you have questions, you could talk to any of us as advisors. We can let you know, so that you have some foundation so that you can really take it to the next level. Examples of these programs are the programs we have in France, in Germany, our program in Florence, in Italy, and in Latin America, Russia, and Spain. A key thing I want to mention about this, if you're listening to this now and you're saying to yourself, oh boy, well, that sounds great, but I wasn't able to get into 101 of Italian, let's say. I really would love to be able to go to Florence, but I guess it's not going to happen. Come and have a conversation with us. We really, really value these programs, and we want to do everything we can to help students get on them. And so, if you are that student and it wasn't able to get in 101, just talk to us and we can find alternative ways of helping you to meet that prerequisite. The second category of programs in non-English speaking countries are what we call field studies programs. And these are a little bit different, and you'll see why. So in these, they're based not at a local university, but rather at an independent center. And here, what you're doing is typically taking courses in English alongside often other American students from other colleges and universities. And here, the purpose is not to develop advanced proficiency in that language. It's rather to attain a really in-depth field experience in your program of study. And so often these programs have major or certain course prerequisites. Good examples of these are the environmental studies programs where, maybe you're going to a place where the local language is Spanish, but it's really not the Spanish that we're sending you there. It's a great bonus that if you happen to be studying the language, but we're sending you there because we want you to be able to study in the, as I mentioned before, the Peruvian highlands and that particular ecosystem. The same can be said for other programs like the ones that we have at, the Siena Art Institute, where the goal is to have this really rich art experience and so on and so forth. If you have questions about these after the fact, and certainly, we welcome you to reach out. Let's talk about when you can study abroad. So we really pride ourselves at Holy Cross at being one of the colleges, the 4-year colleges that sends the most students abroad for the full academic year in the country, right? We often have held the top rank for a number of years running. And so what this amounts to is spending the fall, your fall semester, so fall 22, and spring semester of your junior year abroad. You can also do a calendar year for certain programs that pairs the spring semester of your junior year with the fall semester of your senior year. Certain of our programs are academic year only programs, and these include the programs that you've got here. So Oxford, LSE, Trinity, St. Andrews, and Sussex. But the academic year is the standard in many of our other locations across 15 other countries. The opportunity to study for a semester is available as well. Just talk to any of us, the directors in the study abroad office, and we can let you know about that. So there are certain programs that are by design semester only, and these include our field studies programs and the studio art programs because of the limited curriculum there. You can't study there for more than a single semester. You also have the opportunity to, some folks that aren't aware of this, combine 2 semester programs to make sort of a custom year program. A really good example of this is where you would say, let's say, spend the fall semester on a language immersion program, and then pair that with a field studies program. Like say you want to study in Lima, Peru, and you really get a strong foundation in Spanish at a university-based immersion program. And then you want to go and get that really awesome field research experience where you can conduct interviews with the local population as part of your research and have that experience enriched by those language skills that you've developed. So that's something that you should be considering as well. The last thing I'll mention here is that you do have the opportunity to take advantage of Maymester programs. These are led by 2 Holy Cross faculty for each program. They are 4 to 6 weeks in length, and they run anywhere from the end of May through the end of June. And they're various locations. They are what locations are offered are dependent on the availability of faculty. There will be a Maymester info session at a later date and time as those are finalized. The key thing I want to underscore here is that the Maymester programs are terrific. They are really useful for certain things, right? So the first I think is if you're thinking about getting your feet wet with study abroad, it's a good opportunity to do that, right? So go and have this kind of very structured experience. But you should in no way view them as a replacement to semester and then the academic year program, because they're radically different, right? Because on these programs, they're very structured. You're kind of the whole time with Holy Cross students, so you're sort of, in a bit of a Holy Cross sort of bubble when you're there. So your ability to kind of get an in-depth cultural experience is not really, they're not really designed to provide that. So again, just some things to consider. In no way should you view the Maymester programs as a replacement for semester-based study. Okay. The next myth that I would like to address is this idea that study abroad is prohibitively expensive, that somehow it's just for folks who happen to have enough money to be able to do it. Once again, I'm delighted to make really clear that's just not true. At Study Abroad, we do everything we possibly can to make study abroad as what we call cost neutral as possible. And by this, I mean that the larger expenses, so tuition and housing and board, if you are on a meal plan during your study abroad program, they're designed to be exactly the same as at Holy Cross, right? So if you can afford to study abroad in terms of those big ticket items at Mount St. James, then you can afford to study abroad on any of our programs because those expenses are the same. Financial aid and scholarships, they travel with you. So if you're concerned about that, you don't have to worry. The exception to that is athletic scholarships. There's no work study, but many of the countries where we send students actually do allow you to work and often have a strong minimum wage. So that's something to consider as well. You can ask any of us, any of the directors, and we can guide you there. You were provided with comprehensive international health insurance coverage, and that is in the past semesters, it's been identical to the health service fee that is charged for the students who are at Holy Cross. So again, we try to level the playing field financially as much as we possibly can. Maybe you're saying to yourself, okay, that's great, but how do you expect me to, there's that flight to consider, right? So this is one of the things that I think is really wonderful about Holy Cross. I've not seen this elsewhere. Very proud of this program we have. It's called the Travel Credit, which is a program where we put a credit in your account that is equivalent to the cost of an average round trip ticket from Boston to your program destination. And so the idea here is that we really want to avoid a situation where students are choosing their destination based on, whatever the cheapest plane ticket is. So, well, I guess I can only afford that ticket to Ireland, so I'm going to go to Ireland. No, this is designed to again, address that by giving you this travel credit. It's posted into your account the semester that you go abroad. And the idea is that it ends up saving you whatever the amount of that travel credit is. It's a discount on your tuition and fees for that semester. So it offsets that cost for you in that way. It's a really wonderful program that is available to all students. In terms of finances and study abroad, as you're planning, we want to be transparent about some things that you should be aware of as you're planning. There are some upfront expenses that you should be aware of, where you pay for something up front and then get that offset on the back end. So we mentioned the flights is a good example of that. There are some places where there are refundable housing deposits where you pay a security deposit up front, but then you get it back in full at the end. And then there are some common expenses that are out-of-pocket expenses. Some of these are similar to what you would encounter at Holy Cross, but these are lists that you have here. So your passport and your visa fees are on students. Transportation to and from the airport, often local transportation. Most of the programs we have, you're within walking distance of your of wherever you're taking classes, so it's typically not an issue. Textbooks, much like at Holy Cross, are your responsibility. If your program doesn't have a meal plan, then meals your responsibility, much like as if you were staying in an apartment off campus. Personal expenses, in some places, bedding, cookware, entertainment, dining out, again, not unlike Holy Cross. And last two are laundry expenses and may not be covered in all places, and COVID-19 testing in the event that it's required. The last thing that I want to mention here is, as part of this myth, I think at the sort of the heart of this myth about study abroad being prohibitively expensive is the idea of independent travel, especially travel outside of your host country, because this is a place where if you are, spending every weekend outside of your host country, yeah, there can be some expenses there. But what I want to, make a point of mentioning is that that does not, those out of country travel experiences, not only are they not what study abroad is all about, but they actually, in addition to being, expensive, they really, we feel, detract from the experience that you have the opportunity to have in your host country, where by focusing your energies on your host city and your country, you get this, again, over the life course, a really rare opportunity to fully immerse yourself into a new community where you're able to go beyond being a tourist, where you're able to experience that change from being a total outsider to, riding the bus every day and experiencing the city as an insider would. And as far as those local relationships that you heard your fellow peers talking about, those take time to develop, and those are the key to being able to integrate it. So if you're spending every weekend outside of your host country, you're not going to have the ability to develop those really close ties. And we urge students to really focus your energies on in-country travel, really getting to know your city and region and country. And it'll ultimately be less disruptive to academics, your language development, certainly for those in a language immersion program, extracurricular activities, if you get involved, which we expect you to, you'll be able to maintain those activities better. Friendships, and then lastly, as I said, your budget. If you focus your energies on in-country travel, you will find that the cost will be much, much, much more manageable. The last myth that I want to address is this idea that study abroad is easy, that it's somehow, not academically serious, a vacation abroad, something along those lines. So once again, this is fiction. I think what's important to underscore here is this idea that what you are going to be getting, and the reason you're signing up for this experience, is to have a new academic experience, right? So I think a good case in point is to focus on instruction as an example. So I want to talk briefly about instruction at Holy Cross versus instruction abroad. And I'm going to use the example of our university-based programs here. So here is a snapshot of what might be considered a typical, seminar at Holy Cross, And here's an example of what instruction often looks like at our university-based programs abroad. So to characterize these differences, let's focus on Holy Cross first. So small discussion-oriented classes where the learning is what I would call very professor-directed, right? So when you think about the work that you're doing outside of the class, it's very structured. They'll say, read page X pages and prepare 5 discussion questions for next time, right? You've got a lot of small assignments that are distributed throughout the semester, regular opportunities for feedback. So again, in this case, the professor is very much guiding sort of every step of the learning experience, right? When you go overseas to a lot of our university-based programs, the expectation is from the part of the faculty there that the students are being more independent and sort of deliberate about taking ownership of their learning, right? So often you're taking classes in large sort of lecture-based classrooms, usually paired with a discussion section as well after to kind of digest the material. But in these cases, again, the learning is more student-directed and your out-of-class work is more independent. So you might be told, here's the reading list for the course, come prepared, right? Where the idea is that you're picking the things based on your interest and sort of guiding your learning in that way. In terms of assessments and grading, significant differences. Often in many locations, there are fewer sort of large assignments over the course of the semester, and then relatively fewer opportunities for feedback. And so again, it's a more independent experience. But the thing to note here is that this is the way higher education is done in a majority of the world and in many of the institutions of higher ed in the United States as well. And so what I want to sort of summarize that with as you're going into this process is to not confuse stress with rigor. So, if you receive fewer, graded assignments over the course of a semester, that doesn't mean that you have less work. The idea here is that you should be applying your Holy Cross work ethic, creating your own structure, and finding again a way to sort of organize your learning over the course of the semester so that you can build up to those final papers, those final exams, and be in good stead. And the thought that I want to leave you here with is this idea that, again, to remember that this idea of experiencing different approaches to learning and then ultimately mastering them is exactly the idea of study abroad. It's why you're doing this. And I want to give, this is an area where I want to give the students a chance to kind of weigh in, and also Professor Smith to share some words of advice as well. So whoever wants to chime in is welcome.
I can go first. This may have probably had to do a lot with COVID, but well, it did, because there were only 30 students in my program this past semester, where there's normally like over a couple hundred actually. So the classes were really small, not a lot of lectures like Chris mentioned, but I think that program was unique in that, that it was a smaller classroom-based environment. So it's actually pretty similar to Holy Cross in that way, in terms of how homework was given out. But it was rigorous, and I did do a lot of homework. But they did understand in CYA, they did understand that seeing Athens and walking around and talking to people was an important part of the experience alongside the academic stuff. So yeah.
Sydney, Nick, any comments on the academic experience and sort of being successful in your study abroad classrooms and getting the most out of it as Holy Cross students?
Yeah, I definitely received a culture shock when I started the semester in Germany. It's very different from Holy Cross, as you just mentioned, but I only had 1 out of my 6 classes had assignments that we had to turn in throughout the semester, like presentations or exams and things. Everything came at the way end. So even if the semester feels like a lighter workload, like as the semester goes on, like if you want the same grade that you would get at Holy Cross, like you just have to give it your all, like at the end, and you have to keep going to classes and like take good notes and like stay engaged in the semester, even though you don't have like those weekly assignments or those discussion posts that you would have here. Like it's all going to come down like at the end, and your grade is just going to be what you make it. But it was an interesting learning experience, and I'm happy I did it because it gave me a new perspective on like what school could really be.
Yeah, I'll just say quickly that this independent work that you have to do is part of what Chris mentioned study abroad is all about. It makes you independent, right? And the important point also is that when you go out in the world, you're going to have to be self-directed. That's how you achieve success, is by doing the work yourself and pushing yourself, not having somebody tell you what to do. When you're in medical school or law school, they're not going to be giving you these kinds of hand-holding instructions. They're going to expect you to do the work. And when you study abroad, you have a lot of experience in doing that.
Yeah, and just building off of what everyone said, and specifically touching on language immersion, which is the reason that I went abroad. My language immersion course was 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, for the extent of my study abroad experience. So it was incredibly intense, and that was on top of the other courses that I was taking at my host university. And South Korea's education system is world renowned for its intensity and its rigor, but it was less of a challenge than I thought because of the preparation that I've had at Holy Cross. The kind of work ethic that you build at Holy Cross, in my case, directly translated and really helped me in my study abroad experience in that sort of intense environment. So it does translate, so long as you're willing to put in the work.
And these are all wonderful insights. And I just want to also mention, if I hadn't, that one of the things that I think is great for students going to, again, these university-based programs is that for anybody who's considering grad school at either a master's, but certainly at a PhD level, this is an awesome stepping stone for that kind of work, in that the expectation of your faculty at that point in time will be that, they will present you with the readings that you need to acquaint yourself with. Overall, this is sort of the field in general. But the idea is that, they're treating you as your own sort of, autonomous individual, as an intellectual, with the idea being that you follow the questions that you're interested in, and let those questions that you have based on the material sort of guide your research and so forth. So I think it's a fabulous thing to be able to have as you enter the possibility of attending grad school. Great. Anything else on academics before we proceed? Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to spend just a very brief amount of time on health and safety and COVID-19 here. We'll talk about this more, sort of one-on-one and in advising sessions, but just know that this is something that's, it is the foundation of what we do. It's not what we do, it's the foundation of what we do, though. All of our programs, we have, again, a rigorous safety and security protocol to make sure that you are safe throughout the entirety of your programs. And we have resources for you to get help in the event of an emergency, right? So we'll, again, go through this in depth in other sessions, but just, you will have full access to and guidance on how to use, local emergency services. You will have in many of our locations access to on-site directors and advisors at those host institutions, some of whom are our own staff. You have this wonderful sort of high-powered global security assistance and international health insurance to be able to help you in the event of an emergency. You've got us through the entirety of your program. We're just, a phone call, an email, a text away, and of course the Office of Public Safety. And again, you are all students who study abroad are automatically enrolled in mandatory, international health insurance that provides, fabulous coverage for wherever we send students. So just to address the elephant in the room that everyone's thinking about, COVID-19. Just a quick word on that, right? So, let's say this is you, right? I'm nervous. My parents are nervous about study abroad because of COVID-19. Should I even bother applying, right? And what we say to you is a resounding yes, absolutely. So our approach fundamentally is that we are prepared and we are flexible. We want to be able to adapt and make sure that we're prepared for any scenario. And so the first thing to note is that the application is not binding, right? So let's say that you're thinking about studying abroad, you're excited about all the things that we've discussed, you're not completely sure. Don't let that not completely sure prevent you from submitting an application. Just submit an application. If you decide later that it's not something that you want to do, you will have the opportunity to withdraw. But again, at a minimum, submit the application, get yourself in. The second thing that you need to be aware of is that we have experience managing study abroad programs in the context of a pandemic, and we have 3 students here that are a perfect living case in point of that. We only operate programs where we are able to assure ourselves that they've met strict standards for COVID-19 safety. And in addition, the programs are required to offer in-person classes, but be prepared with a remote backup plan if needed, right? So you have both the 2 things that you need, right? So again, in-person classes, but that you can go into it without fear of losing a semester's worth of coursework. So again, really, really important there. And lastly, you should take some reassurance in the fact that we are currently operating nearly all of our programs this semester. And so, I think this would be also a valuable opportunity to have the students who are here with us tonight to talk a little bit about studying abroad during COVID-19. And these folks arguably were studying abroad during a period of the pandemic, which was, again, not as optimal as it is now, in the sense that this was prior to vaccination. And so I'd love to hear from you all about, maybe your anxieties going into COVID-19 and how that bore out or not during study abroad, and how you were able to make the most of the experience.
So I can go first. I obviously was pretty nervous going into study abroad because of COVID-19, but South Korea has done a great job throughout the pandemic with enforcing things like mask wearing, social distancing. In South Korea, group gatherings were limited to 4 or less. Going into places like museums, restaurants, coffee shops, and the like. When I arrived in South Korea, I was immediately swept into a 2-week-long quarantine. And I was tested before going into quarantine and then before I left quarantine. And something that really reassured me as well, on top of all of the sort of guidelines that the South Korean government had put in place, was the fact that COVID-19 testing in South Korea was completely free. If ever I felt nervous or that I might have been exposed, I was able to get a test, and the South Korean government even sent out notifications of COVID cases as they popped up by district in Seoul. So if I was in a coffee shop one day and then there was a case reported there, they would notify me by text message, and then I would go and get tested. So they had a lot of these sorts of measures in place to make sure that everyone was as safe as they could possibly be.
Yeah, when I got to Germany, I was a bit nervous, but I mean, you just have to be smart about it. You got to follow the Instagram pages from this town that you're in, so you can get like daily incidence level notifications. You need to check with the local government about what the new, like if there's a curfew, or you need to get tested if you want to go inside anything. You just got to keep up to date about everything. I personally got on about every single vaccination list that I could find myself on. And I just showed up one day and I was like, get me that shot. But you just have to be smart about it. If that means just, going on a lot of picnics, or, risking going to like a nearby city to check out like the local town, you just have to stay aware of all the restrictions and all the requirements that local government is doing. And that includes, getting the proper masks. Like in Germany, they only require the FFP2 or what's it called here? The KN95 masks. And like, they're going to stop you if you have the wrong mask. And like, yeah, you just have to be really smart about it. And that's all I can say. But it wasn't scary at all, because I got frequently tested. They were free in Germany. And yeah.
Stephen, before you go, thank you to the 2 of you. I want the audience, the students, to realize that these students were in a much more restricted environment than you're liable to be. They were not able to travel internationally for the most part. And I just wonder if you could comment briefly on whether you felt like, oh, that ruined my study abroad experience, or I wouldn't do it again because I didn't get to travel a lot. Could you just, Stephen, why don't we start with you?
Yep, that was a point I was going to make, actually. So similar to Sydney and Nick, there were restrictions in Greece as well. I had a week-long quarantine, and there were really early curfews early in the semester, like 6 o'clock on the weekdays. No stores were open except for grocery stores. You had to wear masks outdoors. You couldn't gather in groups. And there were travel restrictions even within the city of Athens. So at times I was restricted to, my little town within Athens. But looking at that positively, I got to know my town really, really well. I got to know the walking routes of Athens really, really well. I got to see so many sunsets in Athens. And there was time at the end of the semester to travel around Greece once those restrictions were officially lifted. But I don't think I'd change. I don't think I'd change it if I could go back, because there were really cool opportunities in Athens that I would have missed if I had been elsewhere.
Yeah, the first half of my time abroad, like we weren't allowed to leave Germany at all without participating in a quarantine. So it was a blessing in disguise because I got to see a lot of southern Germany and I really know the region of where I was. But the second half of my time there, like we started checking for border openings and seeing like if we needed to travel anywhere. But yeah, we were just smart. But I actually did meet up with Steven in Austria for a weekend. So it was possible to go places, and just like with regular testing, like things are possible. And now that vaccinations are just all over the place there, it's just getting better. Hopefully with the Delta variant, it'll get even better, hopefully. Yeah.
So do any of you regret having made the decision to study abroad despite the pandemic?
Absolutely not. It was so fun. I'd do it again.
No way. Yeah, I would do it again.
And so that's the point that we want to leave you all with, is that these are folks who were, as Professor Smith made clear, studying abroad during, one of the sort of the peak moments of the pandemic. And we have every reason to hope and expect that by the time that you were studying abroad, which, to be clear, is not for, another year from now, that we will have, made strides as far as the continuing with the vaccination program worldwide and getting ourselves in a better position to where, again, the most likely scenarios where you won't be facing, the same kinds of restrictions that they did. But these are folks who, despite that, absolutely don't regret the decisions that they made. Awesome. Anything else that you want to add, Professor Smith? All right. So at this point, the hope is that we have convinced you that this is absolutely something that you want to do. And what are the next steps? So 3 main things you got to do. You got to attend some study abroad events. You have to talk to some advisors, and you need to submit your online study abroad application. By study abroad events, you want to check out our program-specific info sessions. We do an info session for every single one of our programs. We have where we talk through the nitty-gritty, the details of those programs. We provided a handout that has a schedule. It's also on the website. I'll show you in a minute. We are also going to be hosting a series of lobby tables in Hogan. Where you're going to be able to go, we'll just camp out there. We'll have some students there periodically during, the lunch hour around then, where you can go and just chat with us casually and learn a bit more. So the main website that you need to be going to for all of your information concerning study abroad, if you want to make sure that it's most accurate and up to date, is this one. It's sa.holycross.edu. So you want to talk to advisors, right? So talk to us. That should be one of the first things that you do. Even if you are, no matter where you are in the decision-making process, right? Whether it's, studying abroad at all, or, you've got this specific program you want to go on, or you think you want to study abroad, but you're not sure where, come and chat with us. We'd love to have that conversation. As part of that process as well, it's often a good idea to consult with your academic or your major advisor if you've been assigned one yet, or the study abroad faculty liaison. This is a person. This is an awesome setup at Holy Cross, where there is a dedicated faculty member who serves as sort of the study abroad advisor for that particular major, that is able to guide them on things like the number and the types of courses that students are permitted to take in that major while they're abroad. And I'll show you how to find that information in a second. And then in terms of advisors, your study abroad ambassadors, much like these wonderful folks here. A thing to note on that, obviously, this past year was a little different than most in that we only had 3 programs that were running during this past year. But we have a couple of things. So first, we have a small but really dedicated group of ambassadors that is happy to talk to you about study abroad, not just in the programs that they went to, but in general. They went through the whole process that you're going to be going through, start to finish, in terms of picking programs, getting advised, et cetera, et cetera. So even if you're interested in, say, I don't know, a program in Spain, but there isn't a representative among these folks here, that's okay. Still reach out to them anyway, because they'll have valuable insights about the program in general. As well, we are really, really excited that and just overwhelmed with gratitude that we had ambassadors that were alumni that stepped up to the plate and volunteered to be alumni ambassadors for the first time. And so, what I want to call your attention to here, this is the main Holy Cross website here. And so I want to draw your attention to a couple of things, because I was just talking about ambassadors. So if you see this tab here, this is the home page. You can go to Study Abroad Ambassadors, click on this link here, and this will give you access to the folks who are on campus, like Sydney, Nick, and Stephen, but then also alumni ambassadors who span a much wider range of programs. These are folks who, despite being alums, have volunteered to serve. So reach out to them, send them an email. They'd be happy to share their experiences with you. Other things, just to orient you to this
Chris, can I
website.
just interrupt there? I think you see the fact that these alumni are giving their time and energy and their dedication to study, where you can see how important that is to them, that they're willing to do that. It's in a huge number of students. It's really remarkable. So do reach out to them. I also wanted to comment on the previous slide. When Chris said, meet with SA directors. When I've been answering your questions, I find out I really need to talk to you. So we really want you to see us. We're in our offices. We want you to be there. The other comment about that slide is I want to go consult with your academic major advisors. Not all of them know every little thing about study abroad. It's not their job. So to go back to what Chris said at the very beginning, one of the myths is you can't study abroad. Even if somebody like your academic advisor tells you you can't, they're probably wrong. So if you get that information, and even though you trust and respect that person on this particular topic, you need to be in touch with the study abroad director. Okay, that's what I want.
No, absolutely, that's super helpful. So a couple things as well. So you have here, as I said, on this tab, just want to draw your attention to here. So if you want to know about those program specific info sessions, those lobby tables in Hogan, when those are, if you just navigate here, fall 2021 study abroad events, you have the full schedule here of all the program specific info session. The sessions that are being hosted as Zoom events, you have the direct links to access them here. Here's the information for the lobby tables as well. The last thing, as far as finding out who to reach out to in your respective majors, often folks at this stage don't have a major advisor yet. You can go to department chairs and study abroad advisors, click this link, and then find your major, and you can find the person that is the study abroad advisor for your particular discipline. Again, a really valuable resource there. The other thing that I wanted to point out is here in the Meet Our Staff, you have the information, the contact information for each of the advisors, along with information for how to make an appointment. In some cases, you can just click on a link, and that will bring you to a place where you can ultimately just click any of the links here, book yourself an appointment, and have a chat with us. We are back to being for the most part in person. If you go into our office, this is a note that I've made in some sessions, we historically have really prided ourselves on our open door policy. We still have that policy in place, but because of obviously certain campus restrictions, you might find that our doors are sort of slightly open. That we're there. Just knock on the door, come on in, and we'd be delighted to speak with you. We have an open door sort of walk-in policy, so just come and have a conversation with us.
Excuse me, and if you walk in and the person that you think you need to speak to, the director of certain programs, is not there, just knock on somebody else's door. That all of us are familiar with all the programs, so don't be discouraged.
Awesome. And so again, yep, sa.holycross.edu. And the last thing, and this is the best part about this, right? So submitting a Holy Cross Study Abroad application is easy. Making the decision might be tough. That's where we come in, and that's where you have all these series of appointments. But submitting a study abroad application is really, really easy, right? Just an overview of some of the, you know, the things that we're looking for in general. The expectation, and these are all things that are designed to make sure that you are positioned to succeed during your programs. You don't want to send students to places where they're not going to have a good experience academically, right? And so in general, we're looking for a 3.0 GPA. This varies by location. Some places have, you know, higher cut points. Some places have lower cut points. Again, this is a perfect example where loud and clear, let me remind you, let us be the ones that ultimately decide whether you're eligible to study abroad on something like your GPA. So let's say you've got a 2.9 and you're like, well, I guess I'm not applying to that, you know, to this program, or not applying to study abroad. Please don't be your own sort of, you know, study abroad admissions advisor. Let us do that job. And often there's things that we can do to you know, to make it work. The college does not want students to have deficiencies at the time that you start your program, right? So if you, let's say, withdrew from a class, you know, your first year, they want you to make that class up at some point prior to the start of your study abroad program. So it's okay if you have a deficiency at the time of applying. We'll just need to come up with a plan for helping you to address that deficiency, either through, you know, taking on a 5th course during the semester, or taking a summer class, something along those lines. Various ways there. And then, of course, certain programs have expectations as far as language level, in terms of meeting a certain minimum level of proficiency. Again, let us help you guide you through that process. Some programs as well, like the environmental studies programs, may require like a semester or two of natural science. We can, again, guide you as far as that's concerned. And then it's an online application. It's available at sa.holycross.edu. You're able to log into that application. It's really easy. You can find study abroad in your Google waffle, or you can navigate to sa.holycross.edu and then click login. You'll be directed to log in, and it'll prompt you to ultimately just, you know, if you're assuming you're logged into your Holy Cross email account, it'll just prompt you to click which email, you know, your Holy Cross email account, and get you right in. It's really, really straightforward. And the most sort of substantive thing that you need to submit as part of this process is a 2 to 3 page essay where you explain which program that you're interested in, and ultimately just talk to us about why you think that program is a good fit for you in terms of, you know, what the academic goals that you have, professional goals, you know, social, cultural goals, things that you see that program as ultimately helping you to fulfill. The thing I really want to emphasize here is that we are 100% on your team. And if it isn't abundantly clear from, you know, any of us talking to you, we believe that this is an awesome thing that all students should have the opportunity to do. So again, we're fundamentally on your team. You're not applying for college again. So if you were traumatized by that experience, wipe that slate clean. This is something that, again, some basic, little bit of work, and you're going to be in good shape. And the application system opens this Friday, and it'll close Friday, November 5th. The one thing that I really must emphasize this time around is that if you don't have a valid passport, and I'll explain what I mean specifically about validity here. If you don't have a valid passport right now, you need to apply right away. It is not, if you don't have a passport at the time of submitting your application, to be loud and clear, that's okay. But because of passport processing delays right now, you really owe it to yourself to try to submit your an application for renewal, or if you're getting a new passport for the first time, to submit that right away, to make sure that you have your passport in time to begin applying to the host institutions in the spring semester. Once you've gotten through our first step of the process. It's a 2-step process. You apply to our office for Holy Cross approval, and if we approve you to apply to a particular program, then you submit an application sometime in the spring or thereafter. And so we want to make sure that students have their passports in place for that second stage of the process. So you want to check your passports and make sure that they're valid at least 6 months after the return date. So, for the furthest, away program, a program that's going in the spring, that's coming back, that's going for the spring semester of your junior year, a good target is to make sure that your passport is valid through at least January 2024. An important exception here is Russia, where you need to have a passport that's valid at least 18 months after the return date. And we sent out a series of handouts as part of this meeting, and among them was detailed instructions for how to go about submitting a passport application for a renewal or a new passport.